He said Obama was president up to and beyond the 2016 election. So why didn't he do something about Russian meddling?
When Russians were involved and the Obama administration knew about it, he said this.
I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
Justice isn't blind anymore. Justice will be dead if something doesn't happen here.
The new poll shows support for President Trump's tax cut increasing by 14%.
35% are favorable of the government's policies. That's the highest level in over half a century.
Senate hopeful Mitt Romney getting a huge endorsement from Washington.
You can take the Romney suburban wing of the party and connect it to the Trump blue-collar wing of the party. You then have, I think, an absolute governing majority.
So Jennifer Lawrence has revealed that she is actually going to be taking a break from the spotlight.
Trying to get, young people engaged politically, fix our democracy.
A little Fergie music along with the rest of the Black Eyed Peas to start this hour. Fox and Friends.
That's right. Hard to believe it's February 20th. I'm thinking, have you gotten your taxes done? Taxes are due right around the corner.
In 2 months.
But if you wait,
it's 2 months.
If you wait until March, my tax guy always says, are you going to get money back in a few months? Because you've waited so long.
Right.
So I like to get it done soon, and I haven't even started.
Plus, you want to get to your accountant, because I can't. Do you do your own taxes?
No, I get someone to do it.
You do?
You do your own?
I do the kids' taxes.
Wow.
Do you really?
Wow.
You
Okay.
I help them all.
But,
why not?
But
It's
for
pretty
those
simple.
people who use professionals, if you get it to them at the end of the cycle, they're exhausted. So a lot of times they'll
they
make
get a lot
up
of people they're
numbers,
working with.
and they'll
Make
come up
up
with
numbers.
income that didn't happen.
Who are you using? Because that's called illegal.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just turn myself in at the end of the show.
Oopsie daisy. Anyway, thank you very much. You have 2 months before the taxes are due, but right now we're going to tell you the news of the day, and here's the news of the day. How many times have we heard that Russia colluded with the Trump campaign to throw the election in his favor? Well, we've heard it a million times. However, President Trump himself has been tweeting out, hey, you know what? President Obama knew this was going on. He was president. Why didn't he stop anything last time we had an election? And that could have just put the kibosh on everything.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is exactly what the president tweeted. He said Obama was president up to and beyond the 2016 election. So why didn't he do something about Russian meddling? And I am reading that. I did not memorize it.
Right, that's true. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's a key. If you look at the last 8 years prior to the President Trump's win, which not many people were expecting, especially people in the Obama White House, it was a period of appeasement for Russia and America. We know President Bush at first said, I looked into President Putin's soul. He seems like a good guy. Turns out he's evil. Then the President Obama starts. He says, I know one thing for sure. We're going to have better relations with Russia. And I'm going to show a show of solidarity. I'm going to pull our defensive missiles out of Eastern Europe. Really? You're going to do that ahead of time? They looked at that as weakness. Next thing you know, they're in the Middle East. Next thing you know, they're back from Georgia to the Ukraine. And next thing you know, the President of the United States has to try to reset that relationship, and it doesn't work. And in 2014, they start infiltrating into our election process.
And the next thing you know, President Obama said this on October 18th, right before the election. Listen.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past, or that there are instances in which that will happen this time. And so I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
He did, and he won.
Here's the thing. There's so many Democrats now whining about Russia collusion, although we saw from the Mueller indictments on Friday, there was no collusion that they can prove at this point. But when Barack Obama said those things about how there is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow you could rig the elections because things were so dispersed, President Obama at that time, when he said that, he was hearing from the intel community, the Russians are trying to rig the election. And in fact, a month before he said that, he was sitting down with Vladimir Putin, and he said, I know what you're doing, knock it off. He later told reporters, we believe that Putin knocked it off. He did not knock it off.
And by the
We
way,
now know that
not
for
only
sure.
did they knock it off then, they're not knocking it off now. Within hours of the shooting on Wednesday, they have bots, could be traced back to Russia, working both sides of the gun issue within social media, furthering to divide our country and set up perhaps organizations, riots, and demonstrations around both issues that aren't even set up by Americans.
Yeah. So we asked Speaker of the House, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, about the Obama administration, and did they do enough? Listen to his response.
If this particular project was as big as the news media claims it was, then why didn't the National Security Agency, or why didn't the FBI, why didn't the Central Intelligence Agency? I mean, somebody's supposed to pick it up. There's a long stretch in there where either the system broke down or we have a much deeper need to rebuild our security system. This is not about Obama personally, but that whole structure, you have to say to yourself, if it was as big as Mueller seems to think it was, somebody should have noticed.
And they did, but why didn't they say anything? Among the people that didn't notice is Michael Moore. He participated in an anti-Trump rally right outside Trump Tower days after the election, calling on Donald Trump to come down. The people that organized that rally were Russians.
Sure, and I was watching on Special Report last night. They're so worried about some sort of influence or the hacking of our next election. What some states are talking about is forget about the machines that are hooked up to Wi-Fi, because you can hack into that. Maybe we should go back to paper ballots. But that's scary, because remember Florida back in the day. Exactly.
Right, we don't know how to punch them out. You can't use chads. We just put out...
You make chads.
You could just give people a blank piece of paper. And if they can't spell, they can't vote. And just write the person that you want to see president.
But nonetheless...
That wouldn't be politically correct, Brian.
It brings us back to the original point, was that President Obama, in his last year, knew it was happening and could not or did not do anything to stop it.
But was the ground laid in the interim to destroy the president's first year and mired in controversy about the Russians' imprint on the election, because it's certainly been, at the very least, a distraction for the last 13 months.
Well, a lot of you guys have been writing us about a different topic, too, about Joy Behar making that comment, the vice president. Omarosa said on live TV, or said not live TV, on that reality show that she's a part of, said that when she worked at the White House, that the one you really have to worry about is the vice president, because he speaks to God. He hears from God. Well, then Joy Behar said this about it.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you. That's different. That's called mental illness, if I'm not correct. I'm hearing voices.
Well, the problem is when you say that people who talk to God are mentally ill, there are a lot of Americans who feel exactly that way, that they do have a conversation with the Almighty. Ainsley was down at the border with the Vice President of the United States a couple of days ago and asked him about that exchange, and here is Mike Pence's response.
When I heard that ABC had a program that likened my Christianity to mental illness, I just couldn't be silent. My Christian faith is probably the most important thing in my life. I do try and start every day reading the Bible. My wife and I try and have a prayer together before I leave the house every morning. But I do think I'm a very typical American. I think people of all different faith traditions cherish their faith in God, and to have ABC have a forum that spoke in such meaning terms, I think it's evidence of how out of touch some in the mainstream media are with the faith and values of the American people.
Well, Joy Behar has since said, because ABC took 25,000 calls, furious for people that she would do that she was simply kidding. She was making a joke.
But she does say she gives money to the Catholic Church, so there.
She said she has a lot of family and friends that are Christians.
All right, we asked you what you thought. Bill emailed us. Everyone is missing the saddest part of her statement, the reaction from the audience. They applauded her. Talking about the studio audience.
Everyone laughed.
What does that speak to? I wish we would have heard boos from them, not cheers.
Well, because the people who are in the audience support what those ladies say. And also, don't they hold up the cards that say clap? And the audience just does it?
We do, too, but we don't get any applause.
All right, Brian.
Thank you, Jillian.
Email from Cindy.
Right. I'll do my best Cindy voice. If she does apologize, I will not accept Behar's apology. It is not sincere. She was not joking. It would only be to save her job. We know her true colors, and I can't believe that any Christian would watch the program.
Neil sends this email to us. He says, a message to Joy Behar. God is speaking to you. You're just not listening.
Right.
Oh, boy.
That's good.
But listen, we're talking about The View again for the first time in 5 years, so they got to feel good about it. They should send a thank you note to President Trump every day, because by them teeing off on Trump on a regular basis, they're making themselves relevant.
I don't think this is good for The View, ultimately, because we're a majority Christian nation, and what was said, not good for business.
Right. I actually think that they have a different point of view on that. But I'll tell you one thing that's good for us when Jillian's here.
Hi, good morning, guys.
Hello.
How are you? How's it going?
Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks
All right,
for asking.
good. Yeah, excellent. Let's get you caught up on some of your headlines this morning. Starting with this, today busloads of grieving students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School will march on Florida's Capitol, demanding changes to gun safety laws. Their demonstration coming hours after a judge ruled the Florida shooting suspect's childhood records can go public. The documents revealing allegations that Nicholas Cruz lived in a home filled with abuse and neglect. Meantime, Stoneman Douglas High will reopen in phases starting Friday. Classes will likely resume next week. The building where the killings took place will be demolished. The FBI now joining the desperate search for a missing 5-year-old boy in Kansas. According to his stepmother, Lucas Hernandez was last seen inside his home on Saturday afternoon. When she woke up from a nap, she says he was gone and the back door was open. Police do not suspect Lucas was kidnapped. According to local reports, a relative called Child Protective Services last year, concerned about the child's well-being. Now to extreme weather as the Northeast heats up. Parts of the western U.S. buried in up to a foot of snow. Drivers left dealing with the mess from Denver to Salt Lake City. Even California and Oregon getting hit hard. The system now pushing into the Midwest, bringing snow, ice, and rain. But it's going to be 60s in New York today and close to 70.
Yeah.
Not 70 here tomorrow. It's crazy.
I know, it'd be nice.
I know.
We'll take it.
Yes,
and
we
that
will.
means we go right into spring. It's going to be impossible for it to snow again in February, and nothing's going to happen in March.
It's going to get cold on Thursday.
Says meteorologist Brian Kilmeade.
Right. I have a hunch.
It also means you're not going to be able to swing in Central Park. All the swings are taken by the kids.
That's true.
Sorry, Brian.
That's why there should not be children allowed in the city. I've always said that.
Good.
I've always said that. All right, 12 minutes after the top of the hour. One sheriff is making sure teachers are prepared after last week's school shooting by giving them free concealed carry lessons. What do you think about that? He's going to join us live next.
And you can't make this up. Senator Kamala Harris is sad. Why is she sad? Because fewer illegals are applying for financial aid.